Hello, Snugglebugs, and we're back with our other classes for the top 5 cards that are going to impact the meta, I believe, in the next rotation. These are all sort of more so my opinion and from my anecdotal gameplay, as well as how I feel the cards perform. In today's video, we're going to be checking out the Paladin, Priest, Rogue, Shaman, Warlock, and Warrior cards. If you haven't seen my other video for the other classes and the neutral cards, I will leave a description for it down below. Hopefully create some good discussion, and I guess without too much more, let's just get into it. The top 5 Paladin cards. Start with Oh My Yogg. I think Oh My Yogg is one of those cards that, everyone, it's good to disrupt your opponent sometimes. It can be really bad to play against, especially for a while. It was like the only secret people played, so you kind of knew they had it, which I know sounds good, but, when you have things like quests that you build your whole deck around, does it ever feel bad to if you're not paying attention? Which I know is your fault, but still, if you're not paying attention or you have no other, if you don't play your quest on turn 1, you're going to lose. And if you play your quest on turn 1 when a paladin has a secret, if it's Oh My Yogg, you're going to lose. So sometimes it's one of those cards that just feels bad to play against. It has been powerful. It's been played a lot. It's enabled kind of the bring back of semi-quest or semi-secret decks, as well as just enabling people to play secret packages in other decks that, without such a powerful secret, might not have been possible. Hand of Adal has been in aggro decks, controlled decks, most Paladin decks pretty much since the card had come out in Ashes of Outland. And I mean, it's not hard to see why. It's a decent buff for 2 mana and it cycles. One of the things I've said a few times in my videos about Paladin in the past is there's just so many cards that have pretty good either onboard stats or say effects like +2/+1, which I know isn't like crazy strong. But either way, I think Hand of Adal has just been in, I don't want to say every deck, but almost every deck for Paladin over the last couple of years, and I'm kind of excited to see it go. Or any card, I guess, that feels like, hey, if you don't run this in that class, doesn't even have to be that specific deck, of course, but that class, and it makes it so your deck is that much worse, I think is a sign of not necessarily overpowered, because again, you look at this and it's like really strong, but it's like, I don't know, it's not game winning per se, but it's just, it does feel really, really powerful, and I think it'll be nice to lose this one. The best defense is a great defense. Those are the words of Goody Two Shields. Personally, I love Goody Two Shields. They've been one of my favorite minions in Paladin. It's good for 2 Divine Shield that regains Divine Shield if you play like around it. Makes your opponent play suboptimally sometimes to try to deal with it. As well as kind of what I just said. Sometimes the flavor text or what cards say just wins me over personally. And every time I'd play Goody Two Shields, and you hear that. The best defense is a good defense line. Always kind of cracked me up. It's one of my favorite things. Just the idea of a warrior running around with 2 shields. I don't know. It's funny to me. Either way, I do think that this is another one of those cards that has just been played in so many Paladin decks over the last few years that it's going to seem strange to not see it. As I'll get to also in a bit, I think Paladin might be losing kind of the biggest core in a way of its set. A lot of their cards haven't changed that much. Like the core of the deck hasn't changed that much in a few years, so I think this is going to be another hit to that core. Along with that is Lady Liadrin. Lady Liadrin, this has been one of those cards that has been in Paladin again pretty much for 2 years. There's been a lot of good buff spells, that Hand of Adal that I mentioned before, as well as something I'm going to get into in a little bit. I'm sure everyone can guess what I'm going to say for playing some of those buff spells earlier in the game, or value, I should say, early in the game, because you're, maybe using a minion and a spell to come up with like one powerful minion. Lady Liadrin gives you that value back, allowing you to rebuff things. Specifically, the Libram package. I do feel kind of unfair to say Lady Liadrin is going to be one that, is going to affect the deck a lot. Because in reality, I don't think Lady Liadrin would be anywhere near as powerful or as important in the decks if it wasn't for the entire Libram package. Libram Paladin has been at the top of the meta a good chunk of the time over the last 2 years, and the fact that all of those cards, or I know some had come out, I believe, in a set after, or things like that, but most of those cards were in Ashes of Outland, and then also at least in that 1 year, the deck hasn't changed a ton, really. in almost a year, at least a year and a half. The combination of all the other stuff with the drawing and the cycling of all the cards in your hand, the Lady Liadrin, to get your Libram of Wisdoms back, which, by the way, it's not just one Libram of Wisdom, it's every time you cast it. So if you've cast it, say, 10 times in this game, and you top deck your Liadrin and you play it, you'll get 10 Wisdoms back. I'm very excited to see where Paladin goes after losing all of that stuff, all of the stuff that I mentioned, and especially without the Libram core set, decided to not have to worry about needing to play the Libram package. The top 5 priest cards that will be rotating with the next standard set. Renew, it's just so good, right? Like 1 mana, heal 3, obviously not great. We have things like Flash Heal or Desperate Prayer that heal for more, but it's a heal 3 that discovers a spell. We all know by now, I guess, that the discover mechanic allows for very powerful reaction. So, you may say, oh, I need to condemn really bad, and you have 3 mana or something. You can renew to heal yourself, hope to find that condemn. Not that you always do, but you usually can find something that'll help you. You just have a spare mana, you have a little bit of damage, you activate the renew, you have an idea of what deck you're playing against, you can just pick from that pool, right? You renew into a soul mirror. This leaving, I think, to me is really healthy. I don't think the discover mechanic in of itself is super crazy. I will say, of all the decks that I've played that I can think of, Priest sort of takes advantage of that the most. To kind of add to that, palm reading. So palm reading is another one of those spells that gets played in a lot of Priest decks for a similar reason. It doesn't heal you, but it discovers a spell and then reduces all. So it's a discover card, and it's a mana discount card. Doing this, say, even if you have 4 spells or even 3 spells in your hand, play palm reading, discover, say, that 4th spell, you reduce 4 spells by 1. So you're going, okay, I need to find an answer. So you can do that with the discover. And then you technically get a mana, you net mana, because you might not be able to realize it all that turn. But again, in certain priest decks or most priest decks, that's fine. You don't always need, you maybe you've answered the board already. And again, the fact that you have the other renew type cards that can discover palm reading, and then palm reading can discover it creates like a constant cycle of discover that I think Priest has kind of, some people have been really annoyed with Priest for that reason. And not that it goes with the Discover pool, but on the same note, Sethic Veilweaver is just another one of those kind of non-stop value-oriented Priest cards that really just feels, I don't know, it's random, which means, of course, you're like, oh, okay, it can't always be good, but, you see a lot of people who play the decks where they can cheese out 2, sometimes 3 of these, and the cards that discount spells in their hand, and they can play 20 spells in a turn, even if they don't seem like they do much. Eventually, they're going to get buff spells that are then reduced to 0 mana and blessed to turn their health into attack and things like that. And it's just the constant generation of random cards for Priest to me is a bit much. I know they're still going to have some with things that are still in the rotation, but to me, to see that whole side go, I think will change sort of the way people build Priest decks. And Hysteria, being a dual class card with Warlock, it is used in both, sorry. I would say in Priest, just the 4 mana, hopefully at least remove 2 minions, sometimes more, is really good, because if you have minions, it's not like one of those good types of clears where it's like, oh, you have a bunch of damage and you got to clear their taunt or something, and you can't always do that because it might just kill your own. I guess I'm kind of excited to see it leave and see what else we can come up with for clearing, as well as, honestly, same kind of thing, the soul mirror card. I think soul mirror, I think this is one of the few legendaries, though, that if you're gonna play any form of control-y type priest, craft this first. Well, not anymore, unless you're playing wild, I guess. It's very powerful. 7 mana. I mean, not only is it powerful, but again, kind of going back to the Discover cards, the fact that this will be leaving that pool as well, because even though Soul Mirror is legendary, part of the issue with it was actually that you could discover it off of your renews and your multiple palm readings and things of that nature, and it just made it so you could play a couple Soul Mirrors a game. So not only is it leaving that you can't play it, but leaving the Discover pool, I think is really going to hurdle or impact Priest's board clear. Top 5 rogue cards that will be leaving in the next expansion. I don't have this card, And I know it's actually not seen a ton of right now, just because other changes have made to the deck. But I cannot wait for Cloak of Shadows to be gone. Cards like Cloak of Shadows, they feel bad in my mind, and like the game is no longer interactive, right? A lot of times the decks that played this would not have minions on the board, and they just have the weapon, and they'd basically just use this to go, hey, I hit you for 6, next turn I'm hitting you for 7, and then I'm going to use another Cloak of Shadows and hit you for 8. You know, in Hearthstone, it's meant to be an interactive game, at least for me, I think it should be. So to not have minions on board, not be able to hit their face or do anything with the enemy hero's face, it just feels like you're going, okay, it's fun for the person maybe playing it because they're going to win or potentially win, but it takes away from the fun of the other player. You might not necessarily be going, I don't care if my opponent has fun, but as overall health of the game, I think if 50%, not that everybody played Cloak of Shadows, but if 50% of the players are not having fun, that's going to give a potential for not wanting to play. Then all of a sudden your player base gets lowered, etc. So I think this one leaving, I'm excited. I'm excited for this to leave. Swindle, I'm not excited for this one to leave. I think this is just one of those, it's in almost every, or pretty much in every rogue card. 2 mana, effectively draw 2, of course, because they might play this with like a Foxy Fraud or something like that, so it's comboed and then free with Foxy Fraud. I think it's just one of those things where it's been a staple in Rogue for a really long time. I think it's going to be, unless it's replaced with something near identical, it's going to be difficult for them to find a replacement for this, at least to say in the current pool of cards. But I don't really have much else to say about this one. It's just a good, consistent card that's been played a lot, and it's going to be missed by the Rogue class mains. And with that as well, our friend the Foxy Fraud. I always like this card. It's cute. It is a decently stat minion. I know it cheats out mana, which generally speaking I don't like. But it's specific to target combo cards, and it makes it cost 2 less. So yes, it's really strong with things like the Swindle that I just had up there, of course. So it makes for good combo plays. To me, I still don't think it's crazy overpowered. The fact it has to be this turn means that it has to pretty much be a 2, maybe 3 minute card, because its stats become less important the later in the game it goes. You know, it's one of those things where it works under specific circumstances, and then outside of that, it's still not crazy powerful. So to me, that means that it's a good card. I thought it was a balanced card. Plus, it's just so adorable. And then we have the Wand Thief, another dual class card. I do think personally it's going to be missed more in Mage. At least I've seen it played more in Rogue than in Mage. It's just, again, combo which plays with Rogue. It's 1 mana, so they can either maybe even use it to activate other combos. They might be able to use Foxy Fraud with Wand Thief, so you get 2 minions down for 2 mana, as well as generating a mage spell, which could be, say, a Massive Cthulhu or a Fireball, because rogues tend to like to do a lot of damage. So things like that. I think Wand Thief maybe more of a filler, but it's pretty common. So losing that common early game filler, I think, is going to hurt maybe a lot more than some people realize. And probably the biggest impact to Rogue over the last, or for this entire rotation set, will be Secret Passage. It was nerfed. It used to give you 5 cards. The idea of just being able to use 1 mana, which we've talked about many times in this, in these videos or in with these discussions about how 1 mana sometimes isn't, it's really not that huge of a cost depending on what stage of the game you're in, and to be able to just go, all right, let's see what else we can draw. As well as the fact that it only puts those 4 cards back in your deck. So I think to me that was one of the parts that a lot of people took advantage of. So if you drew tradable cards and you traded them away, the new card you draw wouldn't go back in your deck. You play this into the Swindle. The 2 cards you draw off Swindle do not go back in your deck. This was used as a way to find answers to effectively check 4 other cards in your deck, as well as just value. You'd play Secret Passage, maybe play the Foxy Fraud Swindle. All of a sudden you have 3 mana, draw 2, and then when you put those cards back in your deck, it didn't actually even cost you the cards to play to draw those cards because they came off the Secret Passage, right? I hope it's not in Core. Top 5 Shaman cards that will be rotating with the next expansion out of Standard. Number 1, of course, Lightning Bloom. This was also brought up with the Druid class, and I'm trying not to use multi-class cards too often in these because obviously, and with Shaman in particular, other than the ramp side, which was for the Druid, I actually believe that one of the reasons it's going to be hitting it hard is, especially since the Nixius Lair mini set, Quest Shaman has actually fallen a bit behind compared to where it was a little while ago. But losing Lightning Bloom out of that deck will eliminate a lot of its early game tempo, which is something it already like desperately needed, in my opinion, in order to kind of stay alive into those mid to late game stages. But this is definitely one that I think will be a good change for the meta. Diligent Note Taker is a minion that I think, I don't know, maybe not everybody would have on their top 5 list of cards that are rotating out. Burn Shaman that uses it to get a spell that they can activate twice. Quest Shaman uses this to get a spell with Overload they can cast a second time, or 2 Guidance, etc. I think it's just one of those cards that, even though honestly I don't think it's crazy powerful, the 2 mana 2/3 spell burst, so you have to wait usually till later in the game, so it's not even a tempo 2 mana minion. I don't think it's overpowered by any means, like maybe the Lightning Bloom. It's been a staple in most Shaman decks for a long time because of just how the utility of it. And so I think this is going to be one that will hurt Shaman players quite a bit when it leaves. It'll be a hard hole to fill. Serpent Shrine Portal is another one. Again, I included in here. I'll admit, not to bring up another card sort of thing in the video, but I kind of had a hard time between Serpent Shrine Portal and the Storm Strike, because they both play 2 different roles. The Serpent Shrine Portal, I personally at least have seen more often. It's been a bit more regular. Burn Shaman has been, the top for a little while now. It's come and gone. It was played in Overload Shaman, or still is, when Overload Shaman was kind of the meta tyrant there for a little while before they nerfed the quest. I think Serpent Shrine Portal is just that consistent damage that also gave you a bit of tempo. That again, the one Overload, if anything, in Quest Shaman was actually an upside, but didn't really hurt it enough to make this card not seem extremely powerful. Another card that actually might not be on other people's lists, the Bolner OTK combo, which we also will cover neutral minions, but Yashiraj will also be rotating out. But there's been OTK with Dunk Tanks and Yashiraj before Bolner, because the year before there was the double Battle Cry hero power stuff that didn't make it quite an OTK, but it wasn't infinite OTK, I guess, but it was an OTK. So Dunk Tank, to me, it's one of those cards, again, that, it has good clear potential. It has good, it's face damage Shaman. So I think Burn Shaman plays this card as well, and has also been in OTK variants of Shaman since pretty much it in Yashiraj has come out. And probably to nobody's surprise, the number one card I think that most people will find after the rotation for Shaman is Instructor Fireheart. I think this card is just, honestly, I think it's well designed. I think as a legendary minion that, if you have to play it early, you can discover a single spell to help you recuperate. Late game, it can either help you recuperate or just cycle and potentially try to discover burn. I think legendary minions need to feel really powerful, and then this one also, to me, epitomizes that. Kind of the later in the game it is, the more powerful she is, because you have more mana to kind of try to cycle through those things. I personally will be sad to see Instructor Fireheart leave. Excited for the rotation. Always excited to see the meta shake up. And let me know what you think. The top 5 card packages that will be leaving Warlock in the next expansion. So first up here, I'm just bringing up the Soul Theologist Militia. And the reason is just to represent the entire Soul Fragment package. I know this card in particular has not really been played a lot lately, but things like School Spirits is gone, Soul Shear's gone, and I think those removal tools, as well as sort of the random healing aspect of the Soul Fragments in your deck being gone, can really might hinder some of the stuff that Warlocks do. It gets rid of some of their clear with the Soul Shears, School Spirits clear, as well as, I'm sure there's other ways around activating it and stuff, but losing at the School Spirits currently for the Owl TK version of Warlock could hinder them quite a lot. So I think just losing out on that package, not having those cards to sort of play around with and put in different forms of the Warlock deck could actually be quite huge and change the way that they play a little bit. My boy Ticketus. Now, I haven't played Ticketus in a long time, or quite a while. Ticketus has been obviously quite polarizing in the community because it destroys your opponent's deck. And of course, you have things like Yashiraj to bring it back, or Philosophy now. However, it's real strong. I mean, you look at it, the corrupted version 8/8 for 6 that also destroys 5 cards in your opponent's deck. I do think it's really strong. It's a legendary, so aside from finding ways to cheat it out and then having to corrupt it before it's good, does put some limitations on it. To be honest with you, I think especially in a day and age with things like Kazakhstan now, but honestly with a bunch of, say, OTK decks that were out for a little bit that were dominating, disrupt that might just have to be really powerful. Is an interesting card. I do think it was really strong. It was on that list of similar to some other cards I've talked about, of cards that just felt bad to have played against you, which might alienate some of the player base and make them not want to play. So for that reason, I'm quite glad that it's gone. I think this card was just a bit too overall, which made it seem very powerful. Backfire, as well as the last couple cards actually on my list, really, I think, shine in the Demon Seed versions of the Warlock. I mean, Backfire is just a pretty good card anyway. 3 mana, draw 3. Yes, you do 3 damage to yourself, but in Warlock, a lot of the times that's not really a huge deal, so it didn't really matter, especially with the Demon Seed. If anything, it was actually a plus side, unless, of course, your opponent was super aggro, in which case you might not have 3 health, but will hinder the Demon Seed, and depending, of course, of what else comes out to replace these, may actually make that deck feel slightly less painful to play against, even after the nerfs of both the Demon Seed itself and some of the cards in that deck. It just still feels like bad to me to play against, so that could just be me. But I'm kind of excited to see Backfire go, as well as these next couple cards for that reason. The dual class card, Raise Dead, I know it's also in Priest, and played a decent amount in Priest, to be fair, or in some Priest decks. I personally just think, similar to what I said about the Backfire, the fact that it did 3 damage progressed your Demon Seed quest, as well as those decks tend to play hand-based minions like the Gnolls or the Antherons or Flesh Giants. It allows you to manipulate the size of your hand and things like that. I'm very happy this card's leaving. It never bothered me really pre-Demon Seed, so again, maybe that's the problem card, but maybe that deck will see a change of how it's played with Backfire and Raise Dead and the Flesh Giant being removed in the next rotation. This card has been nerfed twice, and it still feels strong. Like, it was 8 mana, and it was playable sometimes like in the first few turns, and so they upped it to 9. Still way too early, upped it to 10. So seeing him leave the Demon Seed, I think, is going to really impact their damage potential, aside from completing the quest, which, if the entire point of the deck becomes completing the quest, maybe without having the Flesh Giants and stuff to back you up, and then using Raise Dead and getting back more Flesh Giants to pressure your opponent as well as completing your quest, might put it into a more reasonable spot. The top 5 warrior cards that I think will be either missed or affect the deck or the class of the next expansion the most. Kind of weird, because generally speaking, Pirate Warrior, at least prior to the mini set, and then of course in Wild, but we're talking standard, was what was causing issues, and not a ton of those cards will be rotating out. We'll start with Minefield. So Minefield is a 2 mana, deal 5 damage, and even though it's random, the fact it's 2 mana means that you usually play it early in the game. Even the most aggro decks usually stay out by turn 2, even if they went 1 and you skipped your turn, they went 2. Usually at most, they might have 5 health, like with a 2 mana, a 2 health, and then a 3 health card, and you play Minefield and just clear the board and kind of reset. And against an aggro deck, especially, that's really powerful, because of course they want those early game minions. Even mid game stuff, like, trying to think, Priest, they have the 5/5 Death Rattle, draw 2 spells. It's a 5/5 for 5. You have a 2 mana answer, and then you have 3 mana or maybe 4 mana to do whatever else you want. And so it's a good control tool. Another control card that's leaving, Bulwark of Azeroth. Hasn't seen as much play lately. However, again, what I'm going to say is removing this from the pool, honestly, from Juggernaut, might actually be a bigger impact than losing the physical card. The ability for it to just let you survive for attacks, to me, it's very strong. Obviously, again, some aggro decks and stuff that can just sort of literally hit you with 4/1/1s. That means that they didn't spend the turn buffing them and hitting you for, say, 10 or whatever it may be, if you're talking about like aggro druid. So I think Bulwark of Azeroth being removed from the Juggernaut pool, as well as just not being able to be played in Control Warrior, could possibly impact that a lot more than maybe you'd realize if you're looking at the list. Coerce is another control card that has actually made its way also into Pirate Warrior. It's either a combo 1-for-1 removal, or if the minion's damaged, 3 mana, destroy a minion. It's very powerful. I can't really say much more than that. I think it's been played a lot over the last few years for that reason. Either in decks where, you know, maybe you play something like a Bulwark, activate the Coerce, destroy like the enemy's minion, boom, you're back in control. 3 mana removal, very strong. Lord Baerov is the dual class legendary for Warrior and Paladin, and I think both decks will end up losing or missing this for things as removal. You know, Lord Baerov into a Rancor has been a late game board clear armor gain tool of any form of control deck for a while. Some Pirate Warriors don't really play the Rancor, but they'll play Lord Baerov, or sometimes they will play both. For that reason, depending on the state of the meta, it'll be hard to replace something. Setting all enemy minions to 1, definitely not something that's a ton, especially in Warrior. Actually, it's not really a thing. So Warrior's going to be losing out on that. Sword Eater. So this one I left for last because I've seen it played in Control Warriors because it's just 2/5 taunt that gives you a weapon, and I've seen it obviously in Pirate Warriors because it's a pirate that's a 2/5 taunt that gives you a weapon. So you know, this goes really well with in Pirates due to the Defias Cannoneer. You get the Cannoneer out there, then you play the Sword Eater the next turn, or play this first, whichever. Gives you a weapon, attack, the Cannoneer hits for 2. So even though it's the only card that I can find that directly hits the Pirate Warrior deck, I do think that this is going to impact it quite a bit. And for that reason, I'm personally happy. I haven't seen it as much lately. Pirate Warrior. So let me know how you guys feel about Pirate Warrior today compared to maybe what it was a while ago. And I know WoW players hate Pirate Warrior, so if you're watching as well this standard video, feel free to put your rage comments in the comments down below. But thank you guys for sticking around, and I'll see you guys in the next one.